Episode number 25. Chapter 4. Miss Wurstner's friend. For some time after this, Kay found it impossible to exchange even just a few words with Miss Wurstner. He tried to reach her in many and various ways, but she always found a way to avoid it. He would come straight home from the office, remain in her room without the light on, and sit on the sofa with nothing more to distract him than keeping watch on the empty hallway. If the maid went by and closed the door of the apparently empty room, he would get up after a while and open it again. He got up an hour earlier than usual in the morning so that he might perhaps find Miss Wurstner alone as she went to the office. But none of these efforts brought any success. Then he wrote her a letter, both to the office and the flat, attempting once more to justify his behavior, offered to make whatever amends he could, promised never to cross whatever boundary she might set him, and begged merely to have the chance to speak to her sometime, especially as he was unable to do anything with Mrs. Gaubach either until he had spoken with Miss Wurstner. He finally informed her that the following Sunday he would stay in his room all day waiting for a sign from her that there was some hope of his request being fulfilled, or at least that she would explain to him why she could not fulfill it even though he had promised to observe whatever stipulations she might make. The letters were not returned, but there was no answer either. However, on the following Sunday there was a sign that seemed clear enough. It was still early when Kay noticed, through the keyhole, that there was an unusual level of activity in the hallway which soon abated. A French teacher, although she was German and called Montag, a pale and febrile girl with a slight limp, who had previously occupied a room of her own, was moving into Miss Wurstner's room. She could be seen shuffling through the hallway for several hours. There was always another piece of clothing, or a blanket, or a book that she had forgotten, and had to be fetched specially, and brought into the new home. When Mrs. Gaubach brought Kay his breakfast, ever since the time when she had made Kay so cross she didn't trust the maid to do the slightest job, he had no choice but to speak to her, for the first time in 5 days. "Why is there so much noise in the hallway today?" he asked as she poured his coffee out. "Can't something be done about it? Does this clearing out have to be done on a Sunday?" Kay did not look up at Mrs. Gaubach, but he saw nonetheless that she seemed to feel some relief as she breathed in. Even sharp questions like this from Mr. K she perceived as forgiveness, or as the beginning of forgiveness. "We're not clearing anything out, Mr. K," she said. "It's just that Miss Montag is moving in with Miss Wurstner, and is moving her things across." She said nothing more, but just waited to see how Kay would take it, and whether he would allow her to cut on speaking. But Kay kept her in uncertain, took the spoon, and pensively stirred his coffee while he remained silent. Then he looked up at her, and said, "What about the suspicions you had earlier about Miss Wurstner? Have you given them up?" "Mr. K," called Mrs. Gaubach, who had been waiting for this very question, as she put her hands together, and held them out towards him. "I just made a chance remark, and you took it so badly. I didn't have the slightest intention of offending anyone, not you, or anyone else. You've known me for long enough, Mr. K, I'm sure you're convinced of that. You don't know how I've been suffering for the past few days. That I should tell lies about my tenants. And you, Mr. K, you believed it. And said I should give you notice. Give you notice." At this last outcry, Mrs. Gaubach was already choking back her tears. She raised her apron to her face, and blubbered out loud,